Good morning, everybody. Let's just go ahead and start the meeting. And so are we starting approving a minute from last time?
Yes, I approve the minutes.
Oh,
This is Councilmember Lawson.
morning, Councilwoman. All right. Okay. All right. So just be aware. We are. I'm having a difficulty power outage. We got power blew up last night. Probably, you guys probably hear the news, the little fire. So my computer is very slow. So if anything, if I got cut off, Council Member Angela, you make sure to take over. And so,
Okay.
All right.
I will
So,
think so.
all right. Okay. Then go ahead. We start the meeting. We'll be starting it right now.
It's going to be 4A. So we have Jesse
For a
Byrne.
community engagement framework
Yes.
by staff member.
Good morning, Chair Kassaw. Good morning, Vice Chair Lawson. Andrew, are you going to be sharing the screen for PowerPoint or should I?
I've got it.
Great.
Let me just get the proper one. There you are. Sorry for the delay.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Wonderful. So I'm here to share with everybody the engagement framework that the City of Aurora has adopted for information purposes. I'm really excited to share this with you. This has been some work that staff have had for quite some time. We'll be going through some slides that outline what this framework entails, and then I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. Let's go to the first slide. Great. So just as a reference, we all here at the City of Aurora recognize the importance of community engagement. I'm the Community Engagement Division Manager. Again, my name is Jesse Byrne. And so community engagement is something I think many of us, council members and staff members alike, participate in a regular basis. The idea of trying to get useful feedback from the community on a variety of different topics, whether it's informational purposes or at times really trying to getting their feedback around some decision making on some different topics. For example, a ballot initiative would be an example. And so we felt strongly that there does need to be a consistent framework that staff are using to be able to educate ourselves on some best practices when it comes to engaging with the community. And that framework that we've chosen is called the IAP2, which stands for International Association of Public Participation. It's quite a mouthful. So we call it the IAP2, and this is internationally recognized and a framework that I'll be diving in here in just a moment to share more detail with you on. But really this framework at the heart of it aims to guide us as city staff with best practices when it comes to engaging with various communities across Aurora. And we call out that there is a need within this framework for us to be strategic, transparent, consistent, accessible, and inclusive, and also lead with empathy in terms of understanding where residents and communities are coming from on a variety of different topics. Next slide, please. So one thing that IAP2 calls out that is an important component within the framework is that a lot of times, and many of you have probably seen this in the work that you've done, public participation can be oriented towards decision making. And so it is really helpful for us to have a very clear statement with what the issue is or the topic or the need that we are asking for the public to provide input on. And so there are really kind of three questions that ground us within this framework that we think through when at the very beginning deciding what type of engagement we will provide within the community. And those questions are, what is the decision to be made? Can the public contribute to the decision? And if so, what is the public's role in that decision making? Next slide. And we should note that not all public participation programs are the same. For some initiatives, the public's role might look different depending on the topic and what the need is and what the guidance is from City Council, for example. The public's role might be to provide consultation in the form of feedback. So really, they're just kind of giving us some general feedback on a topic, but it's really for us as a city or for the council to make that final decision. But in other cases, the public's role could actually be collaborative in terms of partnering with staff to jointly address a problem or be able to successfully explore an opportunity within that community. And so there's a strong need for us to properly identify what is the public's role and level of participation that helps to form the specific participation goal. And so the IEP2 spectrum, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, really assist with this to help identify what are we asking for from the public, what role are they playing within the decision making, and what does that process look like. And we are able to do this in a really transparent and effective fashion in working with different communities, different groups of residents, different stakeholders. And so the IEP2 provides us as a staff with that framework to be educated on how to best approach some of these different needs and clear goals and clear roles that we're asking from our stakeholders in the community. Next slide, please. I really like this infographic. It's really useful. We've started using this more often just as a staff. It's just a really kind of clean and clear-cut framework that really does a great job of representing what the IEP2 is. So I'll just kind of walk us through this here a little bit. So we've got this spectrum here, right? So you've got all the way over on the far left-hand side, the need to inform the public on a specific topic, problem, need, opportunity. And so this could really just be about a one-way education to the public. This is where you will see a lot of communications that go out on different campaigns or different topics or different programs or different needs. And it's really just letting the public know, hey, this is a resource, or this is a need, or this is an issue. We want to just make you aware of that. It is not necessarily a dialogue. We're not necessarily giving them decision making in any sort of way. We're just making sure that the public is equipped with the knowledge and the information that they need on a very critical topic. And so there is a lot of times where this is the appropriate role for the public in our engagement with them. It's an educational role, it's an informing role to provide the public with balanced and objective information to assist them in understanding the problem, alternatives, opportunities, and/or solutions. And then as you move further over to the right on the consult column, you'll see that this is a little bit more involved, where we are actually engaging with the public. We're obtaining their feedback. This could be through direct facilitation in terms of engaging directly and promoting a dialogue with a stakeholder group, or even surveying is another example of this, where we send out a survey. We're asking for feedback on a specific topic. We're asking for them to consult us on what their views are on that specific topic. And then, our commitment as a city is really to just continue to keep them informed. But really, the decision making here is still very much so with the city. It's not that we are giving any particular community any decision making within that topic. We are just gathering their feedback. And then as you move further over into involve, this is a little bit more in depth in terms of working directly with a community, where we are outlining what their feedback is. We are asking for any concerns that they have, any ideas that they have that might help increase the quality of life within their community. We are actively listening in terms of what that feedback is. And sometimes it could even be around some challenging topics that happen within a community. It can be around safety issues. It can be around a lot of different topics. And then as we start gravitating further over towards collaborate, this is where there's a real kind of partnership that's taking place with the community. It is both the city and that community that are an active dialogue on different topics, and really working together to be able to develop solutions that are hopefully mutually agreed upon, or at least mutually understood from one another. And so this is a more in-depth, the the community or the stakeholder group does have a little bit of decision making in this. They are able to have some pretty strong influence in terms of what the outcome is of that particular topic that we're engaging with them on. And they have an understanding of that. We're very clear about that from the beginning. And then finally, over all the way to the right is the empower. There are going, every now and then to maybe be some instances where there is a community or stakeholder group where they are actually the ones that are making the decision. It's really for us as the city to go before them and provide them with the factual information that they need. And then they get to actually have the decision making within that, which looks very, very different than the first level of inform all the way further over to the left. I'll give just one really quick example in terms of, for anyone that's heard about Build Up Aurora, the capital projects framework that we are working on as a city. I would say that probably falls somewhere here in the consult or involve. We want the stakeholder groups to be able to provide feedback and have some influence on what the outcome is. It's still, at the end of the day, for council and the city to be able to make that decision. But we are interested in what the views are and really getting that feedback and bringing stakeholders into that process so they understand what the framework is that the Build Up Aurora is about, and that we're active in partnering and collaborating with them. And so that just gives you kind of one example. There's many other examples out there, but I would say that the Build Up Aurora probably falls, depending on the stakeholder group we're talking about, somewhere here in the consult or involve framework, of part of the framework in terms of the role that we're asking them to play within that. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we also recognize within community engagement in general is that we want to really be inclusive. And I think that when we think of the word inclusive, we think about specific types of inclusiveness, but there is really a lot of different demographics and needs that we need to be aware of when we're thinking about engaging with the community. So there's some ones that are familiar to a lot of us, like age, income, education, ethnicity or race, accommodation of disabilities. I actually want to flag a couple that maybe we don't think about as often, which is, ones such as technology access. We tend to assume that everybody has the same level of technology literacy or access to technology that we do, and that's not always the case. There are some households that don't. We also want to call out the need for us to be aware of different languages. And that's been, I think, a practice that we've had for quite some time in terms of ensuring that, for example, when we're engaging with different community groups, that we have translation whenever it's available, that we're being inclusive in terms of different languages that are spoken. And so the IEP2 does provide a very strong guidance around this in terms of how we can ensure that we're being very inclusive, which I think is particularly critical for us given how diverse and large the city of Aurora is. Next slide, please. So the question maybe arises, well, how does this actually get implemented? And so there was a business process memo that was issued a few months back. And so employees across all departments are aware of IEP2, and we're working on, continuing to review and develop policy around how department directors can support their staff, particularly those that are designated as those who engage most directly with the community. A lot of departments have different staff members that might be a strong part of their scope of work is getting feedback from the community, and therefore the IEP2 framework is useful for them. There are trainings that the IEP2 offers, and we offer an IEP2 training to applicable staff at least once a year. And so it's really kind of the responsibility of the department directors to just ensure that their applicable staff are aware of IEP2 and that they are taking the opportunity to get trained when that's offered. Next slide. And this just goes into a little bit more detail in terms of us being aware of those trainings. There's a recertification process, for example, with IEP2 for those that have already been trained in it. We do have several staff that have been trained in it. My staff have been trained in it, such as Scott Campbell and John Harris, our community engagement coordinators. And then also just more broadly, us using the IEP2 when we're thinking about really large projects or areas of feedback. Another one that comes to mind is the library has a strategic plan that it's gathering feedback on right now, which is a great opportunity for surveying, which I know they're doing, and getting that feedback from the community. And then also just for keeping track of what some of the community issues are, which I think council members are particularly adept at in terms of understanding, what are those issues in the community that they're hearing within their ward, and us working together as a staff and council to be able to solicit that feedback and identify what the appropriate level of decision making is within the community, and working and collaborating with council to provide us that guidance on what they think is most appropriate. And so we will continue as a staff to be able to train ourselves and get more proficient in this framework, so that not only is it an effective way that we as a city are engaging with the community, but it's also consistent. So it doesn't matter whether it's PROS or it's HCS or it's the library or other departments, that we're all using the same framework. And over time, that will have a really great benefit in terms of the community seeing the consistency with which the staff engage with them, the clarity of the way that we're engaging with them, and the transparency of how we're working with them, and really being effective in terms of identifying when they can have some decision making, and when we can have other ways of just collaborating with them through the use of the IEP2 as a citywide framework. Next slide. So this, again, just kind of details other types of engagement that we do, open houses, informational sessions, public events. All of you are very familiar with these. And again, just designating those professionals within each department to ensure that we're using this framework. I think that might be the last slide. Let's go to the next one. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone that might have them.
Chair Kassaw, can I ask a question? Questions?
Right.
Okay. Jesse, thank you so much for the presentation and providing some understanding about this new framework. I guess the question I have to ensure, this is not taking away from Engage Aurora, right? That's still separate, correct?
Engage Aurora is still very much its own entity.
Okay.
They can make a decision whether they want to use IEP2, but that is their choice. Engage Aurora is a separate entity.
Okay.
Jesse,
So,
can I add to that? So, Councilmember Lawson, Engage Aurora, the people that created it from the software perspective, did it based on the IAP2 framework. So it very much follows the same. And so actually as a city, when we brought that on, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, we actually started down the path of using the IAP2 framework based on the kind of software solution that we had. So that's the software piece to help us. And then what Jesse just described is obviously the whole methodology related to all the in-person and every other type of engagement that we do. But that complements this, and it works in tandem.
okay. Just another question is, I know that this is getting training through the departments. What I'm looking at, and I have no control of how that's done, but what I want to know is the output. So, for example, if we have I know you gave build up, I'm sorry, I can't even talk, build up Aurora, an example. Can you provide me another example from a ward perspective that this would be utilized? Like, for example, in Ward 5, I have a big, there's some changes in terms of apartment complex going up, and then also we're going to have some different things happening with the roads and all of that. I'm just giving just an example. How would this work for that?
I would say that it would be really great, Councilmember Lawson, to partner with one of our community engagement coordinators who typically staffs your ward meetings, to really think through with them on that specific topic around an apartment complex. Do you and the staff member feel like you're asking for decision making from the stakeholders within your ward? Are you asking for to just hear feedback from them in terms of being able to take that back to council if you would like to introduce that as a topic to be weighed in on? I think there's some direction that can happen from you, but it's really working with that trained community engagement coordinator to be able to identify what is that right level that we think is appropriate on that spectrum. around the apartment complex in particular.
Well, that was just a broad example. I know we have planning, and we talk about this in our word. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to fit this concept into that engagement that we have with our residents on certain issues. Certain issues we can't, the council overall makes that decision, but to get the feedback, and that makes a lot of difference in terms of the decision I make on behalf of my constituents and the city as a whole. But I'm just trying to figure out how this I know it complements Engage Aurora, but how this would fit into that, as being a ward council member or just at large on some issues that we face, to just get some input from the constituents that we may not ever hear from. Or so that's kind of what I'm asking, if that makes sense. I'm sorry if I'm muddling the question, but.
No, it's a great question. I like that you're using a real example as well. I think that you would work. So our community engagement coordinator could sit down with you, and it sounds like the topic of what you're talking about within that spectrum would be consult. It sounds like you're asking for your ward to consult with you and the community engagement coordinator, meaning that you're going to ask for feedback from them, and then the community engagement coordinator could devise with in partnership with you some type of facilitation if that's what you would like to do. They could come in and do 30 minutes, an hour, to be able to ask some facilitative questions that would fit within that consult category, and then be able to record that as feedback and data, be able to provide some themes that might be heard from your stakeholder group, and then provide that to you and equip you with that for you to be able to use, should you choose to do so, in terms of moving any type of initiatives forward based on that feedback.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a pretty good concept. So now that I kind of can see how it can kind of play into, my constituents and the city as a whole on different issues. So thank you for that. I'm glad that's a pretty good model. I like that idea. That's just, I know that's one aspect, but yeah.
I love this topic. Let me go through another example. Let's say that there was a topic in your ward where you really actually felt like they had some decision making, like they actually get to decide what the outcome is, and whatever that topic might be. That likewise could be something that the community engagement coordinator works with you on identifying. And the process might look a little bit similar, but the facilitation questions would be different, right? Like you're actually communicating to the residents, like you actually have some decision making in this. It could be something that they vote on, for example. That's a type of decision making. So it's a really great resource to work with your coordinators if they can help you identify where in the spectrum that falls based on what your vision is or what the need is, and then support you in terms of being able to get the appropriate level of feedback and decision making from that particular constituency.
Okay. Well, thank you for addressing my questions.
Thank you.
So Jesse, I don't know if you hear me. So how are we reaching out the community to let everyone know that we have this great service? Before that, I really want to say thank you for the team. It's a good program you guys are bringing to the floor. But how are we reaching out the community that we have this great service?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kassaw. That's a good question. This is really more of an internal framework and training for us. The community gets to see the outcome of it, which is we have a more effective way of engaging with them. It's more consistent across the department. And they have better clarity when it comes to, like we were just discussing a moment ago, they have better clarity when it comes to what their level of involvement is. So IEP2 isn't necessarily a communications that goes out to everybody, but it is something that we use internally to create better outcomes now and in the future in terms of how we work with different stakeholder groups. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And Chair Kassaw, I think I saw Councilmember Murillo raise her hand.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. That was actually because I suddenly lost, somebody changed my permissions randomly in the middle of the meeting, and I had no way of I couldn't even chat to let y'all know. So my apologies.
Oh, did you have I saw your hand raised. So was that just, that was just for that question, or did you want to talk?
Yeah,
on the
let me
subject?
just, I didn't have any questions. Just excited to see the this roll out. I think that you raise some, relevant, like real world examples of how this works. So I think that's always helpful for us to understand, because it's not always clear how like internal policy mixes up with what it looks like externally, and then as us kind of as the liaison, like how we can kind of connect the two. So I think that was a really helpful question, but none other for me.
All right.
Just glad
Thanks
we
so
could
much.
see you. I saw your hand, so sorry to put you on the spot.
All right. Thank you so much. Any further suggestion, question? If not, we'll go to the next line.
Thank you all.
All right. The next one is 4B, Youth Violence Prevention Program updates, right?
Yes, good morning, Chair Kassaw, Vice Chair Lawson, and Councilmember Murillo. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Lisa Batten. I serve as the Intervention Programs Division Manager, and in that role, I oversee our Youth Violence Prevention Program, Aurora Save on the city side, as well as our crisis response programs. So without further ado, we will jump right in. Andrew, if you could go to the, thank you. So some of the items that we will be presenting this morning are some intergovernmental agency agreements to be in alignment with the resolution that Councilmember Lawson introduced late last year and then Council approved in November, the realignment of efforts for the Youth Violence Prevention Program, and encouraging the city to provide funding to Aurora Public Schools, Cherry Creek School District, as well as the Juvenile Assessment Center. We are moving on that and would like to present some intergovernmental agreements to you all so that we can formalize what those programming funds will look like, what the performance measures and reporting measures will look like in accordance with those. Next slide, please. So $50,000 for each entity. Aurora Public Schools and Cherry Creek will both be doing a youth leadership programming. Cherry Creek has had similar programming for several years, and because they have been so successful in that, Aurora Public Schools is looking to replicate those efforts with some minor tweaks to meet their population, but we're very excited to see how each of those entities continue to implement those and develop them in future years. And then the Juvenile Assessment Center, similarly to what they've done in past years with NOFO funding, they will be helping us to do assessment services for youth and their family and resource navigation case management services. Next slide, please, Andrew. Thank you. And so we'll get into the actual IGAs here in a moment, but some quick updates on Aurora Save. As you all know, the Youth Violence Prevention Program on the city side is heavily focused on our partnership with the police department and really building out the Aurora Save strategy, which Councilmember Kassaw, if you are less familiar, it's based on a focused deterrence model of violent crime reduction. So we're happy to say that Aurora Save still continues. As you can see, we've made a lot of contacts with individuals in the 18 months that it has been stood up. We have about an 80% success rate in making contact with our custom candidates right now. Our average age for those customs is 17. We, obviously want to really focus on ages 13 to 25. However, we will never turn anyone away if they meet the criteria to be inducted into the Aurora Safe strategy. As some of you may know, we hosted a call-in in February, and not to be overly superstitious, but we have not had any confirmed group involved or group motivated non-fatal shootings since that call-in in February. So we are very happy to report that. And as this slide says as well, right now we have about 20 families engaged in case management services. We partner with Justice Works for those. Our case manager is deeply involved with the families. It's really a more intense case management provision model, as opposed to, more resource navigation, light touch services. We understand that many of these individuals and their families are experiencing a lot of barriers, a lot of trauma. So we really want to take a more hand-holding, direct case management provision model to that. And with that, I'll pause for any questions that council might have.
I have, Chair Kassaw, I just have a question to Lisa.
Go ahead.
Lisa, so I know that we've had a few shootings of youth. And so when you say, and one was fatal, and then, there was a couple, I know there's something that happened in my ward at the Skate City. So I guess with that, when you're saying that there hasn't been any non-fatals, or is it that they're underneath investigation, so you can't put them in this program? I should know this, but sometimes I'm not sure if things have changed, but I'm just looking at it from that perspective. If it's under investigation, then they're not going to be considered a non-fatal yet, or we're not going to do this call-in for any of the maybe involve youth.
Yes, thank you.
Some of these youth were young. They
They
weren't 17. They were like 14 and 15. So
Yes.
Can I add that on that, Lisa? So I did receive a family call as well. I don't know, the age is 22. Last week, there was online market shooting. Family member lost teenage. I don't know if that is also been investigated. This has just happened last week. Online market shooting, is that considered teenage? Or I think the age is 22. The family member actually contacted me that they lost their loved ones.
Yes, thank you for those questions, Chair Kassaw and Councilmember Lawson. Excellent questions, to be sure. So a couple of points. The Skate City shooting was prior to our February 11th call-in that happened on February 8th, if I recall correctly.
okay.
There have been some arrests, as you know, in that case. And then the most recent homicide, that of course is a fatal shooting, and investigation, as far as I understand, is very much ongoing still. As you know, there have been some arrests in that case as well. So we work very closely with the police department to make sure that nothing that we're doing on the Aurora Save side or youth violence prevention is going to interfere with investigations. So we, definitely want to be working very closely with them about that information, just so that we're keeping those lanes kind of separate. However, having said that, one of the aspects of group violence intervention is something like a custom notification for victims of recent gun violence. So along those lines, we certainly can reach out to and do to recent gun violence victims, including the youth that were involved in the Skate City shooting. One of those youth is actually a success story that I'll be talking about here soon. But yes, to answer your questions, it's not so much the age range that would necessarily, induct somebody into this strategy or program. It's more, was it a group member involved incident, and were there firearms involved? Those are really the criteria specific to Aurora Save. However, on the youth violence side, we take a much more broad approach. So are there any other things that we could do in conjunction with our victim services unit in the police department to provide services and supports to those individuals? So thank you for those questions, council members. I do appreciate them, and I'm happy to present on Aurora Save more broadly in another setting if that would be helpful to folks.
For me, it would be as well. And just another question. I know that Cherry Creek School District is out. Are we doing the rec centers for free? I've been kind of seeing a lot of youth just around, I'm just talking about where I live at, just kind of
Sure.
around and not doing anything, but just seems like are those open, like Central Rec, Moorhead? Are those all giving the free for where the kids could go, the youth could go during spring break? Because I didn't
Yes,
hear
thank you.
much about it, so.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councilmember Lawson. It is my understanding that the rec centers are continuing to do that. I'm happy to confirm that with that staff, but that is my understanding. And in fact, Youth Violence provided some funds for some gift cards as a part of activities for the youth to encourage them to come and participate.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry for all those questions that may be off topic, but just kind of wondering how that fits into this, the contact, and also, how the families are contacted, from the victims to the youth that are at the risk. So thank you for explaining that a little bit further.
Yes, no, thank you for those questions, Councilmember Lawson. I know that it has been some time since we presented on Aurora Save and group violence intervention specifically. So we're happy to schedule another meeting in which we can go in depth on that and to provide some updates around that as well. Thank you for those questions. Any other questions right now?
No questions. Excited and happy to see us partnering directly with the school districts. Y'all have heard me say many times, I think there's more that we could be doing as a city to partner and uplift our community, especially through the schools. We serve the same constituents, so being able to partner with them and continue to deepen that engagement, I think, is really important. And yeah, I think especially during break times, would love to continue to see expansion rather of opportunities for, reduced or free or just like access to our resources, just trying to put kids in more constructive environments when there's time off. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. No,
Thank you, everyone.
And without further ado, that's actually a perfect segue into directly speaking to our intergovernmental agreements. Andrew, if we could. Thank you. And this is just a brief overview of some of our youth violence prevention funds for the budget year 2025 and what we're doing with those. We did include some things that the police department are the fiscal agents on. However, we thought that that would be important to include just given how closely the police department, housing and community services are partnering on these efforts. And if we could go down, Andrew. Thank you. And into the actual IGAs.
So Council or Chair Kassaw, just a logistics thing is you asked me to help you with logistics in this meeting. So really items 4C, 4D, and 4E are related to the presentation that Lisa just provided. So those can be taken all together for a vote of the committee to move forward to study session at this point. So I just wanted to note that for you.
And just one moment on those IGAs. Sorry, everybody.
And Andrew, I don't think we need to pull them up individually. I think the presentation kind of covered them, so we can just, the committee can vote to move them forward unless there's other questions, obviously.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. All right, thank you so much.
Chair Kassaw, I would support advancing all three IGAs.
I would support as well.
All right, copy. We'll go ahead and move to study session. Right. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead to the next agenda, or do we have to approve anything?
Presentation, Chair Kassaw, 4F. So
Okay.
we need.
All right,
That's
let's
with
go to the presentation by staff member.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right, good morning, all. My name's Emma Knight. I'm the manager of our homelessness division. And today I'm just going to be talking to you about an IGA with Adams County for Colorado Legal Services Eviction Prevention Project. Next slide, please. So just some history on this project. We've been doing this since 2018. And it's a collaboration, as I said, with Adams County, but also with the city and county of Broomfield and a bunch of other cities in Adams County. So we've all been members since 2018, and it was approved again in 2021, and it ended at the end of 2024. So this is just to start it again for this year and go through to December of 2026. Next slide, please. So the goal of this program is to really reduce evictions. It is specifically an eviction legal clinic. They don't work with anything else in this clinic, really. So they're only working with folks who are coming in to help them prevent an eviction. So they're also connecting folks with community resources, I think especially if they don't necessarily qualify for the specific program. But services provided to the tenants are help with demand notices, notice to quit, things like that. Working with tenants who have received their court papers and folks who are in subsidized housing and facing eviction. So really, again, all around eviction. Next slide, please. So just for our 2024 numbers to go over what they did last year within this program for Aurora specifically. They worked with 41 households, and that was with all of the people in those households, 112 individuals. And with 4 of those 41 cases, they provided full legal representation for those clients. And when they're not providing full legal representation, they're providing things just like legal advice, maybe helping folks get documents together, things like that. Most cases don't need full legal representation because it can often be just handled before going to court. And that's what they usually try to do. They've also hosted warranty of habitability presentations to go over tenant rights with folks and with folks who are experiencing unacceptable living conditions. Next slide, please. And just outcomes overall for 2024 from this IGA. They had fully 265 cases, and that was for all of the cities involved in this IGA. And as you can see, Aurora had the second highest number of cases that were taken on and helped within this IGA. Next slide, please. So as far as commitments go, we are looking to provide $25,000. This is the commitment we've had for the last couple of years, and it's budgeted within the marijuana funds. And again, we're not even contributing the most out of all of the cities and entities involved in this, but we are getting, I'd say, some of the most help for our residents. So this has been a really successful program for helping our residents avoid evictions. Next slide, please. And as I said, this is a budgeted expense, and it would go through December of 2026. And in 2025 already, Colorado Legal Services has closed another 88 cases for Aurora residents and are currently serving another 199 open cases. So they're really working a lot with Aurora residents specifically, regardless of the fact that we haven't signed this IGA yet. They're very much involved in Aurora. And I think that might be my last slide. Next slide, yeah. So my question for council is this item approved to move to study session? And questions for council?
Any questions?
Yeah, I just have a question to Emma, Chair Kassaw, and I do approve this moving forward to the study session. Emma, I just have a question. So I have I've had some residents that have right now, that's one that's dealing with habitability issues. And when she called the legal services, she's not facing eviction per se, although it could be that way, but she told me that Colorado Legal Services is not taking on any more cases. So if that's the case, and the city is telling us to tell our residents to go to Colorado Legal Services and they're not accepting any cases, how do we deal with that issue? What is something that they could do? I mean, I guess if this option is not available, because I like that they do work with residents or clients on habitability issues, but if they're not accepting any more cases, then how is that working for our residents in Aurora?
Great question, Councilmember Lawson. So I think it depends case to case whether or not they can accept someone. There's different requirements, and the person you're talking about may not have qualified. I'm not sure. I don't know that case, but they do have specific qualifications. I think the habitability was more around, at least in regards to this IGA, was more around just educating clients on expectations with that. Not to say that they can't take clients on who might have habitability issues within their units, but yeah, I think they do have some limits in how many cases they can take at once. But within our IGA, they do need to take a certain amount from Aurora within that IGA. I can't remember what that number is, but I could find that. But again, that's just for evictions. So they do a lot of other stuff in a lot of other cases for folks, but those come from a lot of other sources that aren't from us specifically.
Emma, can I just add to that? So
yeah, of course.
Vice Chair Lawson, I actually followed up with the executive director of Colorado Legal Services on the constituent that you mentioned. They said they are still taking cases and they do look at it by a case-by-case basis. That one did not meet sort of their criteria for what they help with. And they did provide that person with additional other resources. And so they said they do usually try to refer them out to someone else if they can't help. And I know in the past, council has also asked about, this is only for Adams County, that being that this program had been started in Adams County prior. I know we had asked the question about Arapahoe. Arapahoe County funds Colorado Legal Services to help with constituents in Arapahoe County. That funding is running out at the end of this year, but the county will be using part of their 1A money to continue the partnership with Colorado Legal Services. So I just wanted to mention that, and especially if we get that question sometimes at study session, both counties are being served. This longstanding IGA has been with Adams County. So, and Adams County does pay into this as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I do second it, for this item to head it to the study session. If we have any objection.
No, I support, but Chair Kassaw, I just wanted to ask a question before
Please.
Yeah, just if you could just refresh the committee's memory on like who qualifies for something like this. I know there's a lot of folks who will say like I'm being threatened with eviction, but that's can be hyperbole, you know what I mean? In terms of like what specifically, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure. I don't have it pulled up right now, so it would take me a couple minutes, but I'm happy to pull that up and share that with you all. I'm sorry, I don't have that pulled up at the moment, and it wasn't in my presentation, so should have thought ahead about that. My apologies, but I can get that for you and send it to you all.
That would be good for me, just because of just certain circumstances. Like I said, I'm dealing with some habitability issues with some residents right now that live in, duplexes and things like that. So that would be good for me to kind of understand and what they're hearing as well. So I kind of know what's happening. So thank you, Councilmember Murillo, for bringing that up as well. So that would be good information.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Nothing for me.
Right. Okay, so do we have any community members that the next agenda? Okay, I don't see none. Okay. So again, if we have any updates from the community member, if not, we'll go ahead. Conclude our meeting. Okay. Well, Well, thank you so much for for your time and participation. We'll go ahead conclude our meeting today, and we'll see you in the next.